I was peeling an orange when a message popped up on my phone. It was from Cassidy Moore, my old college roommate. We hadn't spoken in 6 years. Seeing her name instantly unearthed a part of my past I'd carefully buried. The message was short, without a greeting or explanation. Just a video and one line. "I can't believe what I saw today. I'm so sorry, Isla." My hands froze. I tapped play. It was a funeral. A chapel I knew too well, Our Lady of Grace. My parents' church. The one I had grown up being dragged to every Sunday morning like clockwork. The camera panned slowly to the front of the room. There they were. My mother, Camille Delacroix, draped in black silk, dabbing her eyes with a white lace handkerchief. My father, Victor, stood at the podium, reading from a card, his voice flat and theatrical. Behind them was a casket. Next to it, surrounded by lilies, was a framed photo. My photo. I stared, unable to breathe. It was a picture from 5 years ago, a time when I still smiled without forcing it. There was no mistake. They were holding a funeral for me. And I was still alive. I stood in my apartment, watching my own funeral. My father's voice cut through the silence. "She struggled for years, but we never stopped loving her. May she rest in peace." He was reading my eulogy. Panic pulsed through my veins. I replayed it over and over, convinced I had to be hallucinating. But it was real. Their faces were calm. Their voices didn't crack with grief, they were steady, like actors reading a script they'd rehearsed to perfection. Why? I hadn't spoken to them in 4 years, not since they cast me out of their lives, stripped me of my name, and left me for dead emotionally. But this was a different kind of death. A fake overdose in Prague. That's what my mother said. I had never been to Prague. I had never overdosed. I had been living in Lisbon, working night shifts at a bakery, sleeping on a couch, saving every cent to stay afloat. There was no tragedy, only lies. I tried calling people who once loved me. Nothing. My cousins ignored my messages. One replied with a question mark and never texted back. My godmother's number had been changed. Only one person replied, Jonah, my childhood friend. Isla, he texted. Are you alive? Yes, I replied. What did they tell everyone? He responded after a long pause. They said you OD'd abroad. They said they couldn't bring your body back. Cremation. Closed casket. It was all very private. There had never been a casket. Or a body. I was alive. And someone had rewritten that fact on paper. I checked the records. Name, Isla Delacroix. Date of death, October 11th. Cause, accidental overdose. Status, deceased. Certificate ID, LQ1940283. It was official. They filed paperwork. They forged my death. I had been buried alive on paper, in memory, and in law. I had to know why. I went digging. Back through every trace of my former life. The answer came fast and hit hard. My younger sister, Vivian. Her social media had just gone public again. Post after post, all pristine. A wedding celebration, champagne towers, diamond rings, floral arches, luxury everything. A life of dreams. Everyone was there. My aunts. My uncles. Even my godfather from Argentina. Everyone. Everyone but me. In one video, her groom made a toast. And there, standing beside him, was my father. Holding a wine glass. Beaming. To the daughter who never let us down, he said. It wasn't grief. It wasn't loss. It was a swap. They didn't just mourn me, they replaced me. And that's when I knew. Vivian didn't just step into my role. She inherited everything, my trust fund, my college savings, the business shares left to me by our grandparents. I had been erased so she could rise. I gathered every document I had, passports, tax records, pay stubs, apartment leases, legal IDs. Then I walked into a law office and laid them down in front of a young attorney who blinked like he'd seen a ghost. You're challenging your own death, he asked. I'm not dead, I said. But I plan to haunt them. He looked at the papers, stunned. We can start with a fraud case and a petition to reverse the declaration of death. It needs to happen fast, I said. Why? I slid the phone toward him. On it, a message from an unknown number. One line. They're holding a memorial for you this Sunday. I knew the church, the time, the address. And now I had a plan. The chapel was packed. Black dresses. Men in suits. Distant relatives clutched tissues and whispered condolences like they were grieving a saint. I stood across the street. Black trench coat. Sunglasses. Invisible. Inside, the show had begun. The organ played. The candles flickered beneath my photo. My father began his practice sermon. She lost her way, he said. But she was loved. My mother dabbed her eyes elegantly. Vivian stood next to the coffin, clutching her pearls, shaking her head like she couldn't believe the loss. Then the priest stepped forward. Let us rise for a moment of silence. The doors creaked open. Gasps. Someone dropped a program. A child whispered, "Mom, that's her." I stepped into the aisle. Click. 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 Each heel on the marble floor echoed like thunder. Faces turned, pale and stunned. My mother's mouth opened and she dropped to the floor like a curtain call, fainting on cue. My father's glass slipped and shattered. Vivian's hands trembled. Champagne spilled over her white shoes. I walked down the aisle and stood beneath the portrait that had declared me dead. I heard I died, I said. But I'm here to correct the story. No one moved. Phones began to rise. There was no accident. No overdose. No closed casket because there was no body. I held up the folder of proof. I've been alive. I've been working. The only thing I lost was all of you. I turned toward my parents. You filed false documents. You faked my death. You gave away my life. Vivian's mouth opened. Don't, I said. Enjoy the house you bought with my money. The room gasped. One person whispered, "She has evidence." Another muttered, "She's alive." A phone blinked red. Good. Let them see this for what it was. Not a funeral. A cover-up. You didn't lose a daughter, I said. You discarded one. And now you get to watch her walk back in. I looked them in the eye, each one of them who had erased me, and turned toward the doors. I walked out slowly. The bells rang behind me, solemn and beautiful. How fitting. A funeral bell. But this time not for me. Later that week, I watched my death certificate get ripped in half. My legal resurrection was complete. Fraud investigations were underway. And I had no plans to disappear again. Sometimes you have to die in their world to be reborn in your own. And I wasn't coming back for forgiveness. I was coming back for freedom.